The Kennedy motorcade from Strange Peaches. I had trouble starting the Morris Minor and feared I might miss the motorcade, but the engine finally caught and the radio came on. Because of the cleared weather that caused me to stop and roll up my sleeves, the bubble top had been removed from the president's black Lincoln, the radio said. Plenty of Dallas cops had been at the airport where the president had touched hands with admirers, and hundreds more were spotted along the route, a map of which had been printed in the newspapers where the 300,000 people were waiting to see the Kennedys ride past in the open car with Governor Connally and his wife and Lyndon Johnson riding a few cars behind. I drove fast and parked the Morris Minor by the Texas Pacific Railroad tracks on Pacific Street in a brown brick warren of warehouses. As I stepped over railroad tracks and around boxcars, I saw a few people sitting on loading platforms eating sandwiches out of paper bags, but most of the workers had gone over a couple of blocks to Dealey Plaza to watch the president. The sidewalks at Elm and Houston beside the school book depository building were crowded, and I didn't immediately see an opening in the crowd across Elm and Dealey Plaza, so I trotted on along Houston to Main Street, going past the criminal courts building, looking for a view for the Bolex. At the corner where the cars were to turn north off Main and onto Houston, I squeezed among people at the curb as I heard cheering and the motorcycles coming amid a roar that boomed toward me along Main like the roar of a football crowd. People flinched back from me, but it didn't matter. I leaned out and saw the motorcade approaching very close. First the motorcycles, and then a pilot car of cops, and then 6 more motorcycles, and the white lead car with the sheriff and the police chief and the Secret Service boss. And finally, 4 or 5 lengths back, came the black Lincoln. Through the viewfinder, I saw Connally's wavy blue-silver hair. Mrs. Connally was the other jump seat, hidden from me. Now I found John F. Kennedy. He was on the side of the car nearest the curb, his eyes crinkled and puffy underneath, an arm on the rim of the open car, shirt cuffs showing, wearing a dotted necktie, looking at the people along the curb as they applauded and called out to him. Kennedy was smiling, a very good smile with very white teeth, and his wife was smiling almost the same way, but without as much heart in it. His hair looked thick and healthy, and his face was tanned, and his eyes were clear, and seemed to be enjoying what they saw. I was struck by how much like a movie star he looked. What an air of ultimate celebrity there was about him, everything put together exactly right, and a good heart showing from that smile and the eyes, with his wife sitting there beside him, trying to smile in the same manner. She had the look of celebrity too, but more distant from the people and from life. A movie star smile that was like a fence between her and the crowd. Where her smile said, "Keep away, I'm doing all right," his said, "We've got it going, and I love it all." They both looked as if they had been made up for the cameras, whites of the eyes sparkling, teeth polished, skin tinted copper, grander than the rest of us. But his face shone with intelligence and humor that broke through the celebrity mask without apology for the mask itself. As the car pulled abreast, I didn't want to see him through the viewfinder, but the movie might require this vision. I lifted the camera, and the president's gray eyes looked directly at me, leaning out from the curb, took me all in with an instant's deep gaze, and looked squarely into my lens, and his lips moved a bit, the smile broadening, and he raised a finger and pointed it at me. And I took my eye away from the viewfinder and looked straight into his eyes. And a communication flashed from him to me that said, "There you are, you freak. What a time you must have among these people. I like you for it. Don't give it up." At the same second he was sending me that message, I was receiving it and thinking as well, with surprise and embarrassment, that I would have such a thought, that if I'd wanted to hurt the man, I was so close I could crack his skull with a 5-iron or couldn't conceivably miss with a pistol. But I could tell this was perverted thought, and it never reached him. He had trained himself to tune out small paranoias. I smiled at him as he looked at me, and his right eye squinted very slightly as if it occurred to him that he had seen me before but could not recall where. Then his eyes left me and held their place in the crowd that was moving past the car. And he said something to his wife, and she looked back, smiling with the flowers in her arms. But our eyes never met. And then the black limousine was going on down the road, and I was looking at the back of the president's head. I didn't wait to film Lyndon Johnson or any of the others. To me, they were just politicians, not great men, just part of the crowd, the same as me. And I still didn't care for all this big-ass politics, but I knew a great man when I saw one. Reflecting on the sensation of having connected in a mental relay with the president and repeating to myself, "There you are, you freak." I ran and caught up with the car as it turned onto Houston Street. I flipped on the long lens and got the Lincoln in my magnified sight again at the motorcade, turned once more onto Elm at the red brick depository building, and started down toward the triple underpass and the railroad trestle. Pop! I knew it was a rifle shot. The sound is so common as to be quite distinctive. Later, many said they thought it was a firecracker or the popping of a paper bag or a backfire, but I knew at once that it was a rifle shot. And I heard myself moan as I looked through the viewfinder and saw Kennedy raise his hands toward his throat and Connally starting to turn back toward him. Pigeons flew up from the depository building. The car kept moving slowly. I was expecting the car to leap ahead and disappear through the underpass, but it moved so very slowly. Pop! The car had passed an oak tree, and now people were screaming and had begun running around in Dealey Plaza. And the pigeons were circling in the sky, and cops in helmets on motorcycles were looking back and forth, wondering where the shots were coming from. Through the viewfinder, I saw Connally sliding down and Kennedy leaning to the left toward his wife, and the black Lincoln almost seemed to be stopping, edging down from a slow motion into stop frame. "Go on!" I cried. "God damn you, go on before they kill him." Someone shouted in my ear. I kept my finger on the button. I was waiting for another shot. The first two shots echoed through the plaza, bounced off the county jail and the depository, caroming around the plaza, and people were running, falling, dodging, throwing themselves into the ground as in war movies. On the grassy knoll, I saw figures scattering, and Kennedy continued to lean in the creeping, leaking pop! Pieces of skull sailed out of Kennedy's head. A red spray flew out, as if a stone had been thrown into a pot of tomato soup. "No! They've got him now!" I yelled. At last, the car moved. As the president's wife began scrambling out the back of the car, out of this blood and madness, at last the car moved forward, carrying its passengers too late down into the underpass. I knew he was dead. Letters from New York, 1964, 1966. April 10th, 1964. Bud's intro. And I did become a partner in an art gallery in Austin. It was called the Gallery Goo. It was supposed to be Gallery 600, but the lettering on the sign was a little off. Fletcher Boone was the proprietor and resident artist. Financially, it was a flop, but that was to be expected. Another partner in the gallery was Ann Richards, who eventually became governor of Texas. Reading this letter, I have to laugh at the date. I had only been in New York for a month. Already, I was looking in other directions. Poolsy-palsy, a serious suggestion. We have reached the place in our lives when we have to decide what is important to us, what we truly want to do and what we do not want to do, what matters essentially and what is essentially crap. Not only because we are getting older, but also because the world is getting older. The Chinese are making a bomb, the blacks and yellows are in revolt in Africa and Asia, God is stirring, all that, everything. But mainly, we are getting older, and why use up our lives in futile grabbing for status and money that neither of us really wants? Why follow the pattern they lay down for us? Why Why bust your ass in something you do not really feel worthwhile merely so your child or children can grow up exactly as you did and get into the same chase and feel the same discontent? We have both been moderately successful in what we do. We are making pretty good money and have pretty good jobs. In my practical field, I have one of the very few very top jobs in the country. But it's not satisfying. Of course, I work on novels, and that can be, I hope it will be, the ultimate satisfaction. And I hope to wrangle around with a couple of deals and escape New York. But if I can't get those deals and can't make enough money by writing novels, then what am I going to do with the last 30, luckily, years of my life? Among money earning possibilities, the only things I care about are bars, books, and paintings. So, why not open a bookshop, art gallery, coffee house? It would, of course, have to be in a place we like. I would say either Austin or Santa Fe. In favor of Austin. Austin is close to Mexico. Austin has the lakes. And I would like to keep roots in Texas, since if I am ever any kind of writer at all, it will be as a Texas writer, I think. Legendary friendship between Bud Shrake, Larry L. King. This is one of thousands of correspondence between them. A letter to Larry L. King, January 7th, 1978. Bud's intro. I spent the best years of my life trying to get a statue of Larry L. King erected in a prominent public place, or actually in any place at all. After repeated failures, I was fired from the statuary committee. The silver lining to that cloud is that I was able to sleep late from then on and stop begging for money from strangers who had never heard of Larry or thought he was the guy with the talk show on television. The movie I'm talking about in this letter became Songwriter. Dear Professor King, I have tried to phone you several dozen times over the past few weeks in order to inform your ass that we are hard at work on the big, fine statue of you that will stand on the site where I discovered the East Pole. We are following your drawing of what the statue would look like as closely as possible. I mean the 14-inch waist, Wilt Chamberlain's cock, and Henry Fonda's face have been no particular problem. But our stonemason keeps misspelling intellectual in the carving at the base of the monument. He got trick fucker in upside down, which he claimed is the only hep way to do it. I hear now that the reason you never answer your phone is you're 1, too famous, 2, too rich, 3, busy singing and reciting on the stage, 4, getting married, 5, busy making Bobby Baker famouser, 6, stoned, 7, degenerated beyond human help, etc., etc. Anyhow, I have heard from folks who have saw your Broadway show, and all I have heard from claim to like it very much. This is dangerous, as us writers know. The Hollywood people on the Killer Bats movie claimed I have wrote the near-perfect script, and they love me to nub as a person, which is why the producer had his secretary call me up and fire me off the movie on Christmas Eve, thus jacking me out of the $50,000 bonus I would have got had I been the only writer employed on the movie as of March 1st. But that are showbiz, Professor. Now it looks like I'm writing a script about country music, a original, as we say, that Willie and Waylon are putting up the front money for and are going to star in along with Mary Kay Place and Dennis Hopper. Jackie Jack got mad and said, count him out. I think he'll come back in. I've been with Willie and Waylon for more than a week now here and in Houston. Willie has blowed my brain, to use the Hepcat phrase, and Waylon's personal conduct makes Jackie Jack and Hopper seem pretty calm. I got to go now to other daily big deals, but I want you to know I got lots of little tiny midgets putting together your monument pebble by pebble, just like they built the Sphinx.